Hello, I am Daisy, and thank you for tuning to my channel. I've been sharing with you the 22 cards on the tarot deck of 78. The 22 are known as the major arcana, and there's something beautiful about the tarot and the way that the designs and the imagery are somehow designed in such a way that we can draw from the images and make relations to anything that could be happening in our life. And isn't that interesting? Even like when we see a billboard sometimes and we're like, oh my God, it reminds you of something. Or a repeating number might remind you of another thing. Or a song might make you remember a memory. So this is the beautiful thing about using the tarot deck as a tool. And the 22 cards on the major arcana, pretty much it could be used as a metaphor of the different experiences that we go through life in our journey. And so there's the whole narration about the Fool's journey that starts with the Fool's deck and culminates in the World. And each card in between allows for an experience that helps us get closer to that place, that evolution of our spirit and our being. And so that's what we're going to. So the Fool had recently been visiting and had gone through the experiences of the Temperance card, which please make sure you check out that video if this is the first time visiting my channel. So now going through that experience and all the things that the Fool learned at that level, what happens next is that harmony, that connection with the divine, the experiences of the earth, and maybe the Fool just got a little bit too comfortable because now he's learning the experiences with what happens at number 15, the Devil's card. Okay, so we're going to look at different aspects here of the number meaning, the symbols, and the other references that we can make when we are looking at this particular card. So another thing that I had mentioned in some of my other videos regarding the tarot is that if you have different decks, you're going to get different symbols. This is from the Everyday Tarot deck, and you can see here how simple and very minimalistic it is, yet we see the symbols of the number, we see the symbols here, we see similar things that we see in the traditional Rider-Waite deck, which is the one that I have up here. And I'm going to keep it up so that you can keep referencing. And this is my professional deck, and also very similar, yet there's some subtle differences, right? So we will go through that next and go through some of the meanings here. So we'll go ahead and jump in and look at the number 15. And as I mentioned before, it's important to have a basic understanding of numbers and numerology because it will add more levels of understanding and being able to kind of pull in what's the vibration just of the aspect of the card here. What's the vibration? Each number has a vibration. And if you study Pythagorean, who came up with these concepts, you'll get to learn the different nuances about this. And so the numbers from 0 to 9 have different vibrations, and you can take a bigger number and consolidate it down to the base number. And so it's interesting because the number 15 represents love, represents independence, represents harmony. And so when you break down the number 15 to its basics, which is the 1 and the 5, you get number 6. And number 6 represents gentle love. And you're like, what the heck? How does all this love, and why is it assigned to the Devil's card, right? But think about it. There's a big lesson to be learned here when we start looking at some of these symbols, which we're going to explore in a little bit, about that self-love and that genuine love and that freedom that we seek. When, you know that saying when they say with love, it's don't confine it. If it's meant to be, set it free, it will come back. Think about all those concepts that just this number seems to resonate true, right? With that gentle love of the number 6, while the 15 is more expansive in that harmony and just that independent love. Well, we don't see that kind of independent love going here, but we'll find out. How do we get to more concepts about this? So that's what we just get from the number on the deck, which is the number 15. Then the other thing, in general, the Devil's card, when we see it, it does not represent, he says, oh my God, it's this taboo. No, this is not something outside. It is something that represents inside of us. When we think about this, this card, when it shows up, it's more about that inner, what I call fear, the ignorance, the fear, that despair that comes from within. And what are some of the other things that this also represents? It's being discontent. It's being confrontation with our inner world and facing our fears. So there is much more that this card represents. It's not representing something on the outside, but as we go through some of the symbols here and the interpreting them, we will be able to see how much more this card allows us to dive into our psyche and find out what it is that may be an obstacle from stopping us achieving the world and all the gift that God has for us. So this card definitely allows us to take a deeper and sincere look at those situations. Okay, so now let's dive into, well, let's stay real quick here with some of the elements that this card represents here, because some of those things as well have to do with the association. So, okay, what are some of the things that we may need to take to memory is understanding that it's associated with Capricorn, Archangel Uriel. Once we know the Archangel association, we also know that the Archangel is associated with the cardinal point pointing north. So those are some of the basic things that we learned as far as that, and that it is associated with the planet Saturn. And Saturn is associated with law and authority. So we can begin to see some of those little things here that, that might be issues, that this card is having to bring to the surface as well. And knowing that it is associated with Saturn, this also will bring some of the energy of Saturn, which is authority, which is focus, which is structure, and bringing more things to the reading that we may need to identify and see how is this relating to this particular scenario that's presenting according to also the other signs that show up. Okay, so now let's take a look at some of the other imagery that we see here, some of the other symbols that we see on the card as well. There's a lot of very similar, not too different from each other, but one of the things, let's start with this pose. One of the things that I noticed was that the pose reminded me of the magician. And one of the things that we could see, and it's interesting because it's a lot easier to show the similarities with the traditional Rider-Waite deck. Look at the hands. Look at the hands. The right hand is pointing up. The left hand is pointing down. So while here, not only with the magician, we saw that the fool on that journey was shown that, hey, you've got elements here to work with, and we're going to give you this staff, and you will use and command it to bring heaven to earth. So now it's interesting because it's the contrary. And it's a lot clearer to see this on the Rider-Waite deck, which is the one that I use most of the time. So we see, look at the pose. There is no wand. There is no wand on the right hand. And we see that he's got a torch and he's pointing the torch down as if to say, we're going to bring light to this darkness. Then the other thing that we could see here is he is on top of this box here. And this box has, what you can see is like the chain, and the chain is going around these two humans, and it's somewhat loose. And it's interesting because, of course, in this deck, it's very lightly loose. The hands are free. The woman has her hands free, and the man has his hands behind his back. On this deck, We see that they both have their hands free, and you can see that their hands are visible. In this deck, we don't see the hands. We don't know if they're tied or not, but these other decks are showing. So it's different things. It's like, okay, well, why are you being so open to allowing this to happen? You know, why can't you just shake the chains off of you? So it's this feeling. Obviously, it's very clear here that their hands are free. No one's holding them down. You know, what's keeping this you from just taking the chains and going off and running away from this situation, right? The other thing pretty obvious is we see this shape of like a goat and creating this kind of triangle type of shape of the face. And so is this like a mockery of the Trinity and the religious, religious mockery here of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit? Don't know. Or do we see this upside down star representing darkness? Is there something, any references to, the darkness, addressing the darkness, the law of duality, light and dark? One of the other things that I noticed was that the similarities between the Lover's card and the Devil's card. And do you remember the concept of numerology, how I mentioned earlier, how when you take 1 + 5 and it gives you 6, the Lover's card is number 6, which represents love, and the Devil represents independence, harmony, and love. The Lover's card represents that gentle love. But then look at this. As here, it almost looks like they're in the Garden of Eden, and here they're like, where are they? Are they lost in the darkness? Are they lost in overindulgence? Here we see the tree of knowledge and the tree of life, but here is the opposite. It's depicted a little bit easier here on this card, where the woman has a tail with grapes and the man has tail with fire. So what is that representing? Could that be that there is drunkenness, of life and overindulgence, and the fire is representing the lust for life and material things? I don't know. What do you think? Right? And so there are other elements here. We talked about the chains. They're tied to this box that the devil is sitting on. So the devil, he could just stay there and they could just remove the chains off their heads and just run off. So what is it that's the self-imposed choice to be in this situation, to be in this, what are you allowing, this fear? But yet they don't look like they're afraid. It's almost like they're choosing, or they're ignorant. They don't know any better. You know how they say, once you know better, you do better, right? Okay, let's see what other elements we can pull out of this. And just kind of, as you can see, we'll keep the cards here. But so we talked about the chains. We talked about they're naked here. They're exposed. They're almost like, hey, they're okay with this situation. And even though the hand here, it's almost like, allowing the fears to play with you, like that's what it feels like. The devil's like, having you like a little puppet here. So what are you allowing in your life? So I think that pretty much these are some of the images that just kind of get you right from the beginning. And so if we're doing a reading, how do we use some of these symbols, now that we know what we know, to bring things out to help, your querying? Could it be that you right now are in a very hopeless situation? Maybe you're not listening to your intuition. Perhaps you're just right now overindulging in certain things in life. What are you allowing to control you? What is it that's happening in your life that has you off course and distracted you from your higher purpose and your higher journey and your higher pursuits? Perhaps this is the time now to regain some of your spirituality, make your divine connection with God, and get back on course. Maybe you have strayed, and it's a reminder that, you know what? You have the power to get yourself back on track and not to allow yourself to be controlled and manipulated by a situation, by a relationship, or by a substance, substance abuse, alcohol, drugs, whatever it is that is taking over your mind and your life. Okay? And now what if this card shows upside down? So the meaning here is a little bit more intense, because now it's really like the despair is double. You know, you're in a situation that you feel like you can't get out of. It's not that you can't, but you feel like you can't. You can't see a way out through it. But hopefully you are able to bring this up and find out, what is it that has you tied down to this? Why are you afraid to even address this? Why are you afraid to look at the situation, you know, with your eyes, and just begin to realize that there isn't anyone else that's going to get you out of this but yourself? Why have you allowed this to go on this much? Or what is it that you are so drawn to that you feel like it's possessing you? Are you holding on to something that's materialistic, and you know, the pursuit of something, and not realizing that that is not going to, when you get there, is it going to make you happy? Is it? There's, you know, how much more do you need to be, you know, in that possession of these things, whether, or allowing, you know, food to be your master, allowing drugs to be your master, allowing alcohol to be your master, allowing the addiction of being a workaholic to be your master. Got to take a step back and take a look at those situations in your life. You also need to look at, are you allowing others to control you? Do you really, why is this sense of hopelessness? And ask these questions, and as you ask the questions, allow the answers to surface. And when the answer surfaces, find out more about that, until there is no fear and there is no connection to fear and hopelessness. Maybe you feel trapped in an unhappy situation, and becoming aware of this is the first step, and facing it is the second step, and joining forces with God to help you, to bring you the solution, will help you start getting out of that. Okay? Well, what's going to happen next? Well, where's the fool going to go once he learns what he needs to learn here? Where's he going? Let's find out in the next video, when he deals with the situation at the tower.